यहाँ क्या हाल होगा?
Good evening, welcome in RNQ Izino classes, Schools of Contemporary Philosophy of Science. Unit 1 Logical Positivism. 1.1 Introduction. Logical Positivism is a movement of traceable to analytical philosophy. The development of science brought about rapid changes in philosophy. The word analysis refers to any philosophy which places its greatest emphasis upon the study of language and its complexities. Philosophical analysis is essentially the study of language, but it must not be confused with other important studies of language. Linguistics, philologists, grammarians, lexicographers, etc. are also involved in a study of language. Their interest, however, is primarily in empirical investigation. They are interested in discovering facts about how our language is used, what meaning words have, how language begin, changes and die, etc. These are scientific questions about language which can only be answered through use of scientific method. The analytical philosopher uses the analytical method as a tool to settle philosophical questions. 1.2 History of the movement. Just as science has to create its own technical vocabulary and introduce concepts example force, mass, atom that are more precise than those supplied by common sense. So also these philosophers argue philosophy must develop its own vocabulary and set of concepts in order to resolve its problems. Other analytics, such as ordinary language, philosophers disagreed with the artificial languages of the logical positivists. Their continuations was that philosophical problems can be solved through natural language as well are all used to communicate with each other. In logical positivism, we find united in a peculiar way of empiricism of Hume, the positivism of compete and match, and the logical analysis of Murray, Russell, Wittgenstein, Whiteheaded, and Fries. The adherents of this trend of thought organized themselves into a philosophical group at Vienna in 1928. The group organized themselves into a philosophical group at Vienna in 1928. The group became known as the Vienna Circle. The prominent members of this group were Moritz Selig, Otto Neurath, and Rudolf Carnap. The movement gradually spread across the world of philosophy. Has Reichenbach founded a center at Berlin at Oxford as Ayer was advocate of this movement. The two principal aims of logical positivism were to provide a secure foundation for the sciences, to demonstrate the meaninglessness of metaphysics. The method adopted are to realize the aims of the logical positivism was logical analysis, especially of language. It is this method which mainly distinguishes this movement from the positivism and empiricism. of earlier time. It is distinguished from the empiricism of Hume. While human empiricism is based on physiological analysis of experience, the logical positivists base their theories on logical analysis of it, while earlier positivists object to metaphysical speculations lessons either because it is unprofitable or because its truths can be proved. The new positivists object propositions are meaningless. The logical positivists dismiss metaphysical questions themselves as nonsensical, so that the questions of their solution does not arise at all. 1.3 The criterion of meaning. The Rochelle and More succeed in bringing to an end the dominion of idealism in British philosophy. American pragmaticists C.S. Peirce and William James were influenced by the writings of Russell and More. It was Russell's brilliant student Ludwig Wittgenstein, through his influential work Tractatus Logico-Philosophy, has argued that metaphysical questions are from their very nature unanswerable. All meaningful discourse is empirical in nature. Metaphysics is not empirical, so it is not meaningful. The necessity of the propositions of mathematics and logic follows from the fact that they are tautologies, making no reference to the world. Since the sentence of metaphysicians are, are neither propositions to empirical science nor tautologies of logics of mathematics, they are nonsensical philosophy. Wittgenstein said, "Is primarily the activity of clarifying language is not a source of a truth about the universe the way Primarily, the activity of clarifying language is not a source of truth about the universe the way, since science is the philosopher's only proper task in to show the person who is puzzled by metaphysical questions that it is meaningless and unanswerable. Language is the symbolic representation of facts experience. It can be analyzed into significant assertions called propositions, and all propositions can be shown by further analysis to consist of some elementary propositions. Every elementary proposition is a picture of some atomic fact experienced. The world is composed of such facts and can be completely analyzed into them. The propositions "this book is blue" can be true only if a book is blue, can be true only if a book is experienced as blue. Logical analysis of the world of experience as pictured by propositions asserting the existence of the world brings us thus to facts or objects related as the ultimate constitutes of the world. The world disposition is different from that of the Hume, for whom experience is simple impressions, not propositions. Hume analyzes experiences physiologically and not logically, and the impressions yield the knowledge of non-related sense objects like blue color, and not of Any fact or combinations of same subjects, like the subject having a blue color or white gentian, or propositions which does not refer to any state of affairs, that is any fact of experiences, therefore no propositions at all. Will the truth of propositions requires that it should agree with reality. The sense of a proposition requires that it should at least refer to possible empirical facts. The sense of a proposition is the method of its verification. To understand a proposition is to know what is the case. If it is true, that is what fact it stands for, which can be expected to be observed or experienced if the proposition is true, but the method of verifying the propositions is also to observe such facts. Hence, the very experience which can verify a proposition is also that which constitute its sense. The verification's theory of meaning supplied the point of departure of the positivists of the Vienna Circle. They utilized this theory for demonstrating meaninglessness of metaphysics as well as for clarifying the propositions of science in England. The most famous logical positivist was A. J. Ayer. Through his famous work Language, Truth and Logic, Ayer placed great emphasis upon the principle of verification. 1.4 Eliminations of metaphysics. अच्छा, वो लाइट नहीं चालू है इसलिए ज्यादा अंधेरा दिख रहा है. हेलो, गुड इवनिंग सुलिस्पा. हेलो, प्लीज मैम बोलिए. यस यस ऑफ कोर्स. यस वी हैव मैम. Till 11 o'clock. Okay. Available? No, you need to take an appointment, ma'am. Closing time till 11 o'clock night. Next to Orchid Hotel, Vileparle East, near Vileparle East, nearby Domestic Airport, next to Orchid Hotel. 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock. That's depend upon you. When will you come? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. What time are you coming, ma'am? Like 7 o'clock. Okay, ma'am. You know the address now, ma'am? Okay, okay, okay. Yes, yes, of course. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Foreigner, eh? Metaphysical entities are beyond sense experience. Transcendental, all metaphysical statements do not meet the conditions of verifiability. Therefore, according to AJR, such statements are nonsensical. According to him, philosophy is nothing but the analysis of language. Fundamental postulate of metaphysics is that there is a super-phenomenal reality since protocol protocol statements are verifiable in experience. No statements which are not which are not reducible to empirically verifiable petrol propositions can process and significance. Metaphysical propositions by their very nature purport to assert the existence of unverifiable trans-empirical entities. They do not possess any sense. Such propositions are not propositions at all. They constitute a body of nonsensical expressions in discards, assertions, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I exist. The refers to the existence of self which is not empirical experience. Similar the metaphysical systems of Spinoza and Leibniz assert the existence of trans-empirical entities which are meaningfulness through his logical analysis of language. Karna points out two chief sources that give rise to meaningless sentences. Either the individual words of sentences are toys brilliant and silky tops. The words have no meaning, but in the following sentences, the quadratic equation attend races Cartier is a prime number. Metaphysicians propound the first kind of nonsense, chiefly under the misconception that to every word to phrase that can be grammatical subject of a sentence, there must somewhere be a real entity corresponding for us. There is no place in the empirical world for many of these entities. A special non-empirical world is invented to house them. The metaphysicians has to show an entity even to the world. Nothing he indiludes in the second kind of nonsense when, for example, he speaks of thing in itself lying beyond all experience. Every one of these words, thing in itself lying beyond all experience, possess meaning in other sentence and context, but as combined here they do not yield any sense, since no empirical verifications is possible with regard to what is beyond all experience. Therefore, as a knowledge of reality, metaphysics is meaningless. 1.5 Logical analysis of science. The functions of philosophy. Hello, good evening, Sulispa. Yes. Oh, you can come anytime till 11 o'clock. Okay, okay.
Hello. Hello. Yes. Okay.
The functions of philosophy according to the logical positivists is to analyze the statements asserted by a scientist, study their kinds of relations, and analysis terms as components of those statements. The logic of science according to Rudolf Carnap consists of two branches. One branch is called logical syntax of formal logic. The logical syntax analyzes complex sentences of sciences and their logical interrelations. The other branch of the logic of science is called sometimes semantics. The meaning aspect of the sentence is called semantics. It considers the relations of linguistic expressions to objects designated by them. Semantic analysis of the language of science discovers, for example, that a term may designate a certain particular object, example the sun, or a certain property of things, example iron, or a certain relations between things, example motherhood, or a certain physical function, example temperature. Is also analysis synonymous terms such as homo, spans, persons, and man. The results of science and their relevance to society are proposed by philosophers. 1.6 Logical positivism and interpretations of science. As the positivists believe in observation and empirical verifications, they interpret the terms like probability, inductions, and laws of nature in their characteristics ways. There are three different kinds of probability in logical positivism. According to Hans Reichenbach probability lies between the two limits of absolute truth and absolute falsity. According to this theory, no conclusions follows from any premise with absolute certainty. The latter can only imply the form of some degree of probability. To Arvon Mises advocates frequently theory of probability. It attempts to base the idea of probability on the observational frequencies of the happenings of a class of events. Probability can be asserted only on statistical of observation and computations. The third conception is the probability and supported by Wittgenstein and Weismann. In this view, probability is a kind of logical relations obtaining between two propositions. Between any two propositions P and Q, there are maybe three kinds of logical relations using Euler's circles. This may be shown as follows. The early analytic philosophers like Bertrand Russell, G. E. Maury, and C. T. Broad influenced many thinkers of the West. Some of the other thinkers who contributed to analytic philosophy are A. J. Ayer, Rudolf Camp, B. V. O. W. V. O. Quine, Carl Hempel, John Wisdom, Gilbert Royal, P. F. Sturzman, and J. L. Einstein. A.J. Ayer. The positivism of A.J. Ayer focused on two areas of philosophy. One, eliminations of metaphysics, and two, principles of verification. His book Language, Truth and Logic deals with the principles of verification. Ayer intended is a certain of meaning through which significant discourse could be distinguished from senseless combinations of words. He states the principles of verifications in this book and attempts to clarify how is it to how is it to be understood and how it can be used to demonstrate the literal meaninglessness A metaphysical sentence. Rudolf Carnap. Testability and meaning is a shorter work of Carnap which appeared in Philosophy of Science in 1936 and 1937. In this, he discussed the meaning criteria and the requirements of an empiricist language, the use of reduction sentence for analyzing assertions about dispositional properties and physicalism as a basis for reconstructing the language of science. Two chief problems of the theory of knowledge are the questions of meaning and the questions of verifications. The first question asks under what conditions a sentence has meaning, in the sense of a cognitive factual meaning. The second one asks how we get to know something, how we can find out whether a given sentence is true or false. The second one presupposes the first one. It by verification is meant a definitive and final establishment of truth. Then no scientific sentence is very verifiable. We can only confirm a sentence more and more. Therefore, we speak of the problem of confirmation rather than the problem of verification. We shall call a sentence testable if we know such a method of testing for it, and we call it confirmable if we know under what conditions the sentence should be confirmed. A sentence may be confirmable without being testable. The difficulties in discussions of epistemological and methodological problems are often due to mixing up of logical and empirical questions. Carnap attempts to formulate the principle of empiricism in a more exact way by starting a requirement of conformability to testability as a certain criterion of meaning. Different requirements are discussed corresponding to different restrictions of the language. W.B.O. Quine. W.B.O. Quine is a well-known logician and analytic philosopher with positivism sympathies. His essay "Two Dogmas of Empiricism" appeared in the Philosophical Review in 1950. In this essay, Quine challenges two doctrines which many people feel are central to logical positivism. One, the analytic synthetic distinctions and the belief that there are propositions which future experience can never cause us to reject as false. The analytic synthetic distinction has a long history in modern philosophy. The distinction between analytic and synthetic statements can be found in writings of Leibniz, Hume and Kant. According to Kant, an analytic statement is one in which the predicate does not add anything new to the subject. Example: a bachelor is an unmarried man. B. Iron is a metal. An analytic statement is limited to subject-predicate form. A synthetic statement is one in which the fact can be experienced. Example: water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. But W.B. Quine raises a question of whether there be a distinction between analytic and synthetic systematics. He calls the distinction between analytic and synthetic statements as dogma and other dogma pertains to the belief that there are certain propositions which no experience can ever land ever la- ever ever land us to the reject. He argues that although there may be propositions whose through be whose through be would abandon only as a least resort, there are nevertheless no propositions which could not in principle by upset by future experience. Quine's view is supportive of a kind of empiricism without the above two dogmas. Karl Hampel. The fundamental tenet of modern empiricism is the view that all non-analytic knowledge is based on experience. This thesis is called the principles of empiricism. According to the contemporary logical positivist, a sentence makes a cognitively meaningful assertion and thus can be said to be either true or false according to the empiricist criterion of cognitive meaning or of cognitive significance. Many of the formulations of traditional metaphysics and large parts of epistemology are devoid of cognitive significance. Hampel attempts to provide in detail the logic and methodology of empirical science and clarify and restate the basic ideas of empiricism. He wants changes in the empiricist criterion of meaning. These changes focus on the testability criterion of empirical meaning, the concept of testability, which is to render precious the vague notions of being based or rather baseable on experience, has undergone several modifications which reflect an increasingly refined analysis of the structure of empirical knowledge. A sentence has cognitive meaning if and only if it is translatable into empirical language. According to Hempel, there are requirements for both complete verifiability of complete falsifiability in principle. According to the requirement of complete verifiability in principle, a sentence has empirical meaning if and only if it is not analytic and follows logically from some finite and logically consist class of observation sentence. According to the requirement of complete falsifiability in principle in sentence has empirical meaning if and only it is denied is not analytic and follows logically from some finite logically consistent class of observation sentences. Where are you going?
Huh?
Where are you going?
I am going to I think Kandivali.
For what?
Hmm?
John Wisdom was a student of Vigestian. Through his articles and books, he has brought to linguistic analysis on original and existing new kind of philosophical procedure. He is not in agreement with Vigestian A.J. Ayer and the logical positivists in rejecting metaphysics as nonsensical. On the other hand, tries to understand why metaphysicians feel compelled to talk in their linguistically old ways by putting stress upon the imperfect similarities between various. Kinds of statements in our language. He hopes to discover what is and is not valuable in the various attempts to solve metaphysical problems. Wisdom states the therapeutic conception of philosophy. His articles, Goods in Philosophy and Psychoanalysis and Other Minds, reveal his emphasis on the analogy between philosophical and neurotic distress, contrasting them with other kinds of problems. Philosophers reasons for and against their doctrines, and in the doing so as not new things but old things are new. According to him, a purely linguistic treatment of philosophical conflicts is often inadequate. Besides the latent linguistic source, there are others non-linguistic and much more hidden which subtly cooperate with the features of language to produce philosophers. Philosophical disputes can go on too long since there is something queer about philosophical regions. Philosophers' chronic indecision, whether it takes the form of enthusiastic oscillations or melancholic inactivity, is due to the fact that besides the reasons revealed in the course of talking about the matter, there are others which remain hidden. Gilbert Ryle. In this popular book, The Concept of Mind, Gilbert Ryle it tries to refute Descartes' myth prevalent among theorists that man has both a body and a mind. That body is in space, subject to mechanical laws and observable by sense organs, whereas the mind is an opposite kind of private existence, being not in space, not subject to such laws, and not observable by others. According to Royal Mind, body relation is not that of a ghost mind in a machine body. Mind can be analogous to a pilot in a ship, dualish like Descartes' commit a logical blunder in counting mind and body as two species of the same genus existence. Royal uses plenty of similes and metaphors to counteract the effects of opposite metaphysics lying behind the philosophical conceptions of mind as an accurate and mysterious entity. The family of categories relating to the realm of mind may be divided into the three broad classes from like mind, spirit, self, etc., which suggests that mind is a kind of substance, adjectival term signifying some present or current quantities and act belonging to mind. Example: consequence, a lot, attentive thing, imagine, etc. And three similar adjectival terms signifying some capacities and disposition. Example: intelligent, clever, rational, critical, rash, etc. All argues that capacity of potentiality is a mythical entity. He is consequence, alert, and so on, means he is acting or behaving in a particular observable way. Searle reduces the dispositions of occurrence and all occurrence to observe outer activities that rise to the without terms implying mental phenomena. It is supposed that thinking is the cause of doing. There is no internal evidence of our consequences to show that the outer act is preceded by another inner act. Moreover, if we suppose the necessity of a precedent mental act as a cause of the outer act, we must think of a second mental act preceding the first, and so on and infinitum. So the suppositions of a higher order of inner mental causes of explaining the outer act is untenable. Trial questions the view that consciousness is the essence of mind. Feelings are nothing but bodily sensations. The categories signifying the private inner higher order of mental capacities, qualities, and acts can be replaced. Categories signifying physical process. Therefore, there is no mystical entity called mind. Mind can be replaced by the tip person. J. Austin. Austin exerted great influence on his students through his writings. He agrees with other analytics in the convictions that the study of language is of the greatest value in dealing with philosophical questions like digestion and wisdom. He believes that a great deal of what philosophers have written is not so much false as it is misleading and confused. However, Austin's procedure for discipline this confusion is unique. He displayed an amazing talent for articulating the subtle shifts of meaning which results from the most minute grammatical changes. He was clearly of the opinion that the study of grammar is philosophically important. He attempted to demonstrate this in his later works. He believed that the time was not yet ripe for speculation in philosophy. We must first become as clear as possible about how our language operates before we attempt to settle philosophical problems or even speculate on whether any of them can be solved. Thus, as Austin never endorsed Wittgenstein speculations about the ultimate fate of philosophy. P. F. Starvation, one of the most discussed analytical philosophers of 20th century, was P. F. Starvation. In his book Individual, he attempts to show that certain general conclusions about the world can be gained from the analysis of how we speak. He argued that there was no real antithesis between linguistic analysis and a certain kinds of metaphysics. He distinguished two kinds of metaphysical, that is, only attempts to describe the conceptual boundaries on our language, descriptive metaphysics, and that which attempts to revise honorary metaphysics. His essay on Referring challenges Russell's theory of description, Starverson argues that Russell made all least two mistakes. He did not fully realize that a sentence can have a variety of uses, and he mistakenly thought that every meaningful sentence must be either true or false. According to Starverson, a sentence such as "the present king of France is wise," when used today, is neither true nor false. For the questions of its truth or falsity does not even arise. Such a sentence simply presupposes but does not assert that there is a king of France and science. This presupposition is false. The questions of truth or falsity can't be an issue. Russell's theory of unnecessary scenes is uttered from the beginning of the 17th century onwards during the reigns of each successive French monarch. It was also uttered during the subsequent periods in which France was not a monarchy. There are also differences between different occasions of the use of these sentences. For instance, if one man uttered it and the region of Loxis XI with another man uttered it during the reign of Lunius XP, it would be natural to say that they were respectively talking about different people. If one on the other hand, two different men simultaneously uttered the sentence, then they were both talking about the same person, and in that case, in using the sentence, they must either both have made a true assertions or both have made a false assertions. This illustrates the use of sentence. We can't talk to the sentence being true or false, but only if it's being used to make a true or false assertions of Staroson being true or false, but only of this being used to make a true or false assertion references the problems in making identification statements and the logic of subjects and predicates the contextual requirement for the referring use of pronouns may be started with the greatest precision in some cases, e.g., T and U, and only with the greatest vagueries. In others, it and this sentence may be classified into two classes: those of which the correct referring used is regulated by some general referring come as ascriptive conventions. Example: pronouns, which is the least descriptive, meaning that is to those of which the correct referring
हाँ तो सोना आने के बाद जाएगा ना गाड़ी से बढ़ेगा ना अभी अपने को क्या पता है वो ओरिजिनल हम लोग अप्रूवल करेंगे तभी ना अभी वो भेजेगा ठीक है अब उसमें कुछ खराबी रहेगा कोटिंग कोटिंग कुछ भी चीजें रहेगा तो हम लोग कैसे बताएं जब तक हम लोग कंफर्म नहीं करेंगे तब तक वो लोग काटेंगे नहीं ना कैसे काटेंगे ये बात तो तब नहीं आ रहा है
use is the regulated by no general conventions, either of the contextuals of the ascriptive kind, but by conventions which are ADHOC for each particular use. 1.8 criticism. One point and criticism for logical positivism. The positivist attack on metaphysics evoked vehement protest and counterattacks from the opponents of logical positivism. The counterattacks made the supporters of the logical positivists to define their views in different ways. by the supporters of the logical also is visit to divine their views in different ways. The verificational theory is categorized on many grounds. What is the meaning of verifications? When it is said that the meaning of a proposition depends on the method of its verification. If it means that the observational context is the criterion for the truth of propositions, then the historical statement and the statement about objects not yet perceived and meaningless. Faced by these difficulties, some visits admit that by verification should be meant verification in theory or principle and not necessarily in practice. If by verifications the positivists believe in the sense of con- conclusively proving some propositions to be true or false, there are statements which can't be verified conclusively. Arsenic in Poisonious, this wire conducts electricity. There is other side for the moon. Man is mortal. The above statement can be verified in indirect ways. Siglick says that a statement man is mortal is nonsensical, only an important type of nonsense. This mistake called proper remark that logical positivism destroyed not only metaphysics but also natural science according to proper. Even limited number of critical observations can conclusively confute that is falsity if not to establish of a general propositions and that a sentence should be allowed to be significant if it express something which can be confuted by experience. AGI rejects the falsification theory and defends its verification theory by introducing the concept of probability in the meaning of statements, the general propositions of signs of significant because it is possible to observe facts which render them probably if not certain. He maintains therefore that verifications in the definitions of meaning अच्छा वहाँ से ही ले ली थी पेंट वगैरह
ये उसमें बुक में लिखो
क्या नाम है कौन है सारू
हाँ ये है 60 मिनट
हेलो गुड इवनिंग सुलिस्का yes yes please the source you can come on 8 p.m.
60
so you can come now okay so I booked your appointment on 8 p.m. okay thank you you know address na sir नाम क्या है बताओ
हेलो हाँ बोलो ना ओ ओके ओके ओके
Priori analytic propositions. In the case of big verifications, it is possible to provide a proof of probability of propositions. Example, all synthetic propositions. In all synthetic propositions are only probably true. They can be verified only in the big sense. It is self-contradictory to say that propositions concerning syntax or logical principles possess significance and at the time same that there are some important types of nonsense. The logical positivist's aim is to defend science, but by reinterpreting science to suit their principles, they do not defend the science by sense experience. Positivists like Carnap mean introspections and even mystical experience. Also, this is deviations from the original standpoint of the logical positivism, but in spite of its drawbacks, it made an impact on several fields of philosophy such as epistemology and ethics. In this unit,